Let me announce in the Discord as well.
Are we live? Why don't I see us?
Oh, there we are. There's a
Oh, there's
small lag.
us.
Yeah, look, it's us.
Oh my God, look how
Um,
cute we are.
I feel like people are always like, Gene, you could do all these overlays. You could put the chat in the thing. And I'm like,
Oh my God.
do I look
But
like I have a lot of time to spend to configure this? Oh, there's Quinn.
I think this approach of just like take a Zoom and put it in the chat is perfect.
Yeah, it was really interesting because some people emailed me. It was really funny. It was like a chain of emails. It was some
Mhm.
professors. They're like, Gene, we want to do a stream. And what happened was like some professors emailed some other professor who emailed someone
Uh-huh.
else who then like forwarded it to me. And they were like, Gene, we all really want to know, how do you stream to Twitch? And I was like, I just stream the Zoom. Like,
Yeah. I mean, it's not
I
the easiest thing, like setting up the what's it called, OBS or whatever.
Yeah, no, because like they're like, do you have to do OBS? And I was like, no, just like do like it's actually not quite straightforward. Oh, Quinn said, "Hey, Paul, long time no see. I guess you can't see me, but yeah, I know Quinn had been like wanting you on here for a while, I think, or Quinn was like very excited.
Awesome.
Um,
I
and
love
so
a
I
good
wanted to make sure, yeah, Quinn, did you get my message? I really wanted to make sure you didn't miss this one. Um, but Quinn knows you. I don't, yeah, you guys can
yeah.
split this up.
Yeah.
But someone asked, oh wait, you can stream straight from Zoom. Yeah, this is Zoom through Restream. But it's pretty straightforward. Like I tried, so I used OBS to do Zoom Bachelorette and Zoom Bachelor. I don't know if anyone
Mhm.
watched those, but like I did not really have the compute for it. So I had to close like all of my apps. I had to use a
Mhm.
second laptop for my Slack. Because like during the show we had to like Slack a bunch of stuff. I use like my phone, like it was like really, really primitive. So I think there's like no way I could do PL Talk that way.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so let's see. Cool. Um, oh, Quinn apparently had missed this on the schedule, so it was good. Yeah, because this is a new one that got added recently. So let me announce in the Discord. Um,
I wonder how many times I can tweet about this with it in a 5 minute period without pissing people off.
Yeah, I used to think, oh, Pierce is tweeting or Pierce is announcing. Good. Thank you, Pierce. Thank goodness for Pierce. I used to think I could only tweet once a day and like during the
Uh,
hours of 3 to 5 p.m. because I read a guide that said like to establish your social brand, that's what
mhm.
you should do. And I was like, this seems really
Oh my
limiting.
God, there's a cat.
Oh yeah, that's my cat. But now I just tweet all the time and it seems okay.
Mhm.
A funny thing happened with my cat today. I don't know if you have cats, but I opened up a can of soup for lunch because I was like, I don't know what to eat for lunch. I'll just eat one of my like COVID supply chain disaster stockpile soups. And then my cat comes over and she's like, meow, meow. And I'm like, no, this is human food. It clearly smells like, oh,
Yeah.
like it actually smells exactly
Mhm. Yeah.
the same.
I had a cat once, and the she used to just like sit stalking me in the living room. So whenever I would go in there at night, I would have to turn on the light, make eye contact, and that was the only way that she wouldn't attack me.
Yeah, wow. No, my cat is very she's a very docile cat. Like apparently she can't live with other cats because they just
Mhm.
like take advantage of how nice she is.
Aw.
Like when we adopted her, they're like, make sure she's the only cat. And we were like,
Mhm.
is she really mean or something? And what we realized was like one day we forgot to feed her and like she never complained. Just in the morning, she
Oh.
was just like, and then we were like, oh no.
I used to have my desk in the living room, and I had this like chair with these high arms. And at about a quarter to eight, so the cat would get fed at eight. At a quarter to eight, she would put her like hands up on my desk and then like start to tap me on the arm. Yeah.
Oh, that's very cute. Yeah, that's what my other cat used to do. But this cat, she just sits and like it's very funny. She'll adjust her feet. Like every time you
Mhm.
look at her, like it's like her like throat clearing. It's like she'll like
Mhm.
adjust a paw, adjust another paw, but like very subtly. She just like looks at you with hope. And so if
Mhm.
you forget,
Mhm.
like she's just yeah.
Uh, Also,
Uh,
since we're on PL Talk, it's relevant that my cat's name was Peyton, and I'll let you figure out why.
oh,
Mhm.
was it named after Simon?
It was. It was.
Oh, I think he'd be really honored. Yeah,
I
so some
went to
people
I went to Hopple like 15 years ago, and I saw like everyone speak, and I was like, oh my God, this is the best.
that's amazing. There's another Hopple this summer.
I know, I've signed up.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, Cubite says, do you have a cat? Yes, I have a cat. My cat, well, she has another thing about my cat, and then we'll begin because we've definitely
Oh,
reached
that's
a
a good one.
quorum. Oh my gosh, I love these cat names. But my cat, so my boyfriend, he like is the primary food giver, and she coos at him very gently. She's like, Dad, Dad. And to me, she's like, meow, meow. So like I read recently that Julius Randle on the Knicks stopped swearing so much on the court because his son, like every time something would happen, he'd be like, what the fuck was that call? And then he's like, oh my gosh, is that this example I'm setting for my kids? So I'm like, why does my cat like go like that to me? Is that what I sound? Cool. So I think we're ready to begin. 43 people are in
Okay.
the audience. So welcome everyone. Welcome to PL Talk. This is PL Talk in case you didn't know where you were. We're a weekly live stream co-hosted by Hong-Yi and me. Hong-Yi is out for the second straight week in a row doing security people things, but he will be back soon. Next week we're doing a very security thing. So hopefully he's back for that. But the goal of this live stream started with Hong-Yi is a security engineer, but he started just emailing me about programming languages one day. And I gave him like a lot of links and he's like, wow, I've always wanted to know about this stuff, but it's so like hard to figure out how. And so then during his time in between jobs, I was like, hey, Hong-Yi, we should do a live stream. But I didn't really think that this would happen. I was just really into trying to live stream at the time. But you know, we did one, people showed up, people like showed up again when we had a session about what should we keep live streaming about. And that was the birth of PL Talk. And so yeah, I guess for a little bit of background, I'm the founder of this company called Akita. We're a dev tools, API tools company. And so today's topic is very near and dear to my heart. And today's guest is very near and dear to my heart because Paul was the co-founder of CircleCI. He's well known for being a great thinker in the dev tool space. And as you may know, since this is why you're here, Paul has been working on Darkling, which is, you know, next generation programming with a complexity that is life. And so yeah, Paul, I think yeah, we'll let you spend a few minutes introducing yourself. I usually tell people like don't spend too long, but I feel like your story is interesting enough that people want to know it. And
Well,
then
thank you for that lovely intro. That was delightful.
Yeah, and then don't worry, we'll get into demos, guys. Yeah, so Paul, please go ahead and talk about yourself.
Okay. I didn't know it was my turn to talk. Well, thank you so much for having me. This is great. I love this. Yes, my background. I did CS in for my undergrad. Then I did a startup that went terribly, so I did a PhD in compilers and static analysis. So specifically, I did. The topic of my dissertation was design and implementation of an ahead of time compiler for PHP. The joke being I did a compiler called PHC, which compiled PHP for my PhD. So did that. Then after I finished, I did like this Y Combinator startup that was fucking horrendous. Let's never talk about that again. And then I went to work at Mozilla. I was an engineer on the Firefox engine. Honestly, didn't accomplish much there either. And then I started CircleCI, and so that's like the one big win. And I stayed at CircleCI for about 4 years. I was the CEO, got us to like, you know, a couple million revenue, and then stepped down, let someone else take over. And actually, the Circle just announced a phenomenal fundraising round of like 100 million at like 1.7 billion valuation.
No, that's amazing.
At Crazy Town, I was like, great. I did not take it that far, but I'm delighted with that. And then in 2017, I started Dark, and that's where I still am, working every day on making Dark work.
Cool. And Paul, you had mentioned you wanted to explain like the fairly recent transition of like how Dark is structured. I don't know if you want to talk about that now or in the discussion session.
Maybe let's do it later. But if you're one of the early people, I think that the message I would like to say is Dark is not dead, not by like a long shot.
Yeah, I think it's really cool to see like Dark being so active still. Oh yeah, I have like related to your cat. I have a thing. I wanted to popularize Simon Peyton-Jones as cats before.
Oh my God. Did that say Guido as possums?
Yeah, well, I just like,
Amazing.
I don't know
Oh.
if you've seen my threads. I really like things as other things. And so like I found this picture of Simon, I found this picture of a cat. I was like, so same. And so
Mhm.
I had some other suggestions for threads people can make.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you want to just give people an idea of like why dark? Like, was there a moment in your life where you're like, man, we need dark? Or was it like a more of an evolution? What is dark?
I mean, it was definitely an evolution, like something that sort of came together over like 5 years of like thinking about like all the problems that I had in my life and realizing that they were all the same. Um, there's like a ton of different threads, everything from like thinking about like how closure is great but also sucks, to realizing that like building software that isn't the core competency in a company is just like too hard. Um, and lots of realizations about programming languages, but fundamentally that any time that I went to write software, I would get bogged down in like all the work of writing the software and never the actual, the cool thing. And when I was in college, it was great. You do some sort of like Project Euler, or the Google had all this cool shit that you would do with algorithms, and like you just write it in Python on your computer, it'd be great.
Yeah.
And it's like we're so far from that. Like we've regressed so much, even from like PHP scripts I wrote back in the day. And so when after Circle, I did a sabbatical, traveled around, went to Recurse Center in New York, and I was thinking about like what am I going to do next in my life, and I had all these ideas about like startups that I might build, and just like simple dumb ideas that might be fun to chase down. And anytime I started down building one of them, I was just like, oh my god, how am I going to build this as like a 1 or 2 person company? I don't want to like constantly be maintaining this thing, and all that. And at the same time, I didn't want to do like a growth startup. I had done that with Circle, and that burnt me out. The demands of VC are just like constant and forever. And so I was like, I'm going to build a nice 1 person startup. Maybe it'll have like 5 people, maybe 10 people at some point. And then I decided not to do that. I was just like, this shit is too hard to build. I'm going to build the big solution to fucking everything. And I sort of sat down I wrote a couple of like essays about it that I never published, but just like sent to a couple of people. And then I started like emailing a couple of people at like Google and Microsoft, being like, can I come over and build this in your cloud? And they were all like, no. So raised some money and started building Dark.
Cool. And I think I really started to appreciate dark more because so as I mentioned on Twitter, we're at Akita, we've sort of taken the opposite view of dark. We're just like, man, well, it's the exact same motivation, which is modern programming has like all this stuff going on, APIs everywhere. There are all these infrastructure layers. You just don't know what's going on. And so for us, we're like, we'll just build you stuff to tell you everything that's going on. And like the thing that's taken us like the last year to build, and we're still building, is like people run us once. And then they're like, okay, but now we have to integrate you here with like our service mesh, and here, like all these pieces. So like what we've been struggling with is like how do we get people to like easily integrate us everywhere? And so like the way I put it in my in one of my tweets was like, you're building like this simplifying, abstracting version of that, like just one button, don't worry about it. And we've taken like, we let you sit with all the complexity, and like 1 year later we're still we're still like building all the pieces of all the complexity.
Well, it turns out that building the one true solution to all the complexity is also hard, and it also takes quite a long time.
Yeah, so I think both sides, like I think just like, how do you build like, even just like a company that requires like so many pieces to be built? Because other people are like, oh, we just demoed our thing and now like we hired an engineer, it's built. And I'm like, oh my God, I am so jealous. And like, I don't know if you ran into like similar problems of like finding engineers who can like be early at a startup, but deep enough to like handle the beastly complexity of like.
Well, in the early days, I was working with this engineer, Ian Connolly, and we were like, just brain mesh was going on in the early days. So when we the initial version of Dark I built in 2 weeks, and I had like a working blog in the thing that I built in 2 weeks. And it was like this back end in Python, front end in Elm. It was like was amazing. And like it barely worked, but like conceptually it was amazing. And so then we set about like, how the thing that I knew, of course, is that one, you're building live, you're coding in production all the time.
Yep.
Two, that the editor has to be like part of Dark, and three, that the
Yep.
language itself has to be
Yeah.
part of Dark. And so we built this like nodes and edges thing.
Yeah.
And you drag things around, and the nodes are functions, and the arrows are arguments, and it did not work at all. We had all these people like come in and try it out and be like, PVH, Peter Van Hardenberg, came over, and he was like, I have never had as much difficulty coding as I have in this. And we just like asked them to write fizzbuzz. Like people were struggling. They thought they were idiots. They thought it was them, not us. And so we kind of, that was like the early days. And of course we abandoned that and went with like this AST based approach that had most of the advantages, but like looks a lot more like code.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, should we just get into demos as you explain what Dark does? Because I feel like I did not grasp Dark for a long time.
Yeah.
But I feel like seeing it is the best way.
Yes, I think so. So before I quickly or before I start into the demo, I think the sort of like the background context is like the goal is, how do you build backends without all the complexity of building in the cloud today, and specifically the tooling complexity, the API complexity, the deployment complexity, and the infrastructure complexity. And I guess I will give a quick demo, and it will be clear how it all works.
Cool. Yeah, and I think people think it's very cool and interesting that you're manipulating the AST directly. Someone also wants to know, were you inspired by academic stuff as you're building Dark?
Okay, well, those will be, let me come back to those once we do a bit of a demo, because I have a script and I'm not very good at giving this. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so first thing is that this is a Dark canvas. This is brand new. Nothing has been put on it up until now. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a Hello World app. So I go to /hello, make a new HTTP handler called hello. Can people see the text? I have it quite big, but let me know if someone is saying in the chat that it's not. And so I typed hello world, and I'm just going to open that in a new tab, and that is it. It is on the internet. All of all the people watching the stream can go to that, and I will see their live traces directly in the browser. In my editor, because that's how it works.
Oh, Paul, do you want to Zoom chat me that link? Then I can Twitch chat it, or you can Twitch chat it directly.
I can Twitch chat it directly. I thought they would just read it off my screen. There we go. And I'm gonna have to move around a lot here to see. Oh, there. See, everyone's clicking it. You can see all these traces coming in.
Whoa, that's
these are the actual requests that people are making. You can see, information about people's about people's browser and all that sort of thing. There's someone in Safari there. I see an Apple WebKit. Here's someone's IP address. All that.
Cubite says she can see her house from here.
Love it.
Yeah, this is, someone else said slick. This is amazing, because I feel like I spend a lot of time being like, what does it mean to code against production? And this is like, this is beautiful.
Yeah, and so let's, we'll make it a little bit more dynamic. We'll have a user. So now when you go to hello, you get nothing. But if you go to like hello Paul, you'll get hello Paul. So that's our new route for people. Your name.
This is really, really cool. I love this.
Yeah, so it gets a little more interesting from here, because like to create a database is just the exact same thing. So I'm going to create a new database. I'm going to call it hosts for the demo I'm going to give in a second. And so you've got a host called string. Like compare this to writing an SQL like create statement and like managing the migration and that sort of thing. It's just it's just super simple like this. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating an Office sign-in app.
Wow, that's so slick.
I've I pre-installed it. If I would show you the static thing, if I was it, well, let me zoom out a bit. So I pre-uploaded the assets to Dark, and I preset a couple of tokens to make the request. And I'm just going to make a very simple Office sign-in app. So let's start with making a slash route get, and I'm going to serve the assets that I uploaded a second ago. So in here, there's an index.html, and you see this little play button. I'm going to zoom in again. See this little play button. This is an impure function. So pure functions get pure stuff gets automatically executed, like the hello plus user thing, but impure things do not get immediately evaluated. So I'm going to press play, and then I can see the value of serve latest, which is that a 200 response with 860 bytes. And
yeah, that's
let's
very
open
cool.
that. And there.
Someone said the text is getting a little bit small.
Text is getting small. Okay, let's go up one.
And then somebody else asked, are the links you're sharing permanent? Like, should we include them in the resources for our live stream?
No. This is just the demo.
Okay.
I mean, they will be here until the end of time unless I delete them. But yeah, they're just here for the demo. Okay. So there's a couple of interesting things there. So the first, this we're showing you the values live in your editor, right? So maybe it'd be easier at this font size to show you the user. When I put my mouse here, I can see the user who made the username that someone put in the URL. And so I can just like click through all these. Here's a JSON, here's boom filter, you've got an L. Someone's saying hello Darklang, Baron fell, hello folks. So like I can see in my browser, or like in my editor, the exact value of a particular expression that an actual customer has made to your website.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is sorry. What's that?
Go ahead. I've been talking too much.
Well, so this is incredible. I have not seen a Dark demo in a long time, but I feel like the picture I paint for like why people want to do the stuff we're doing with Akita is we're like collecting all the information so that in their current systems, like one day we can slowly build, like decades from now, to a world where like this is true. And I feel like you've taken like the complete inverse approach, which like I love, because like then you're just like, look, it's here today, and we're like, all right, well, like watch your API. We'll catalog everything, and then one day we'll show you everything. Yeah.
You can kind of see why we're building all the editor, the infrastructure, and the language, because like it doesn't really make sense to bite off so much, but because we control all of it, we can do things like this. Like, we can't do this someday you're going to build an Akita plugin to VS Code that's somehow built into like the debugging framework.
Yeah, exactly. Like years from now, we'll finally connect up all the pieces. Yeah, exactly. So this is incredible, because I feel like when I'm like, imagine a world where you're like coding against prod, like this is like as close to what that is as I've ever seen. Yeah.
So let me go to show you another thing. So this is the request. So this just like serves the latest static assets. And I go to the page, and here it is. And the interesting thing here, I'm going to zoom in again for you people. It says request failed with status 404, right? So it made a 404 request to see who the hosts are, and there was no host, there was no API available at the /hosts thing. So I mouse over the 404s section, and I can see all the requests that have been made to the site. And I see hosts is one of them. I'm going to fix the font in a second. I just click, Quinn was here, hello Quinn. I just click the plus, and I've got this live request that I made. I'm going to zoom in again. This doesn't really work at this level of zoom for you to see it, but I will do my best to accommodate you folks. So here's the request that I made. Even before I had a handler for it, the trace was stored and made available, so that when I do have the handler, in this particular case, I don't want to do anything. I just want to return Paul there, and that's all that it took to create the thing.
That's incredible. Yeah. Kevin says he keeps just saying, or they keep saying neat over and over again.
Okay,
They just can't
awesome.
stop. Someone else asked, what happens to this live display when you're getting thousands of requests a second though? Like, what does that look like?
So what happens actually is my database goes out of control. So we have one person who's built this site that has like thousands of users, and what happens when he gets requests is that the job that cleans up the traces from our database is not able to run. And so I've got 3 terabytes of his traces in my database and almost
Wow.
nothing else. So like everything else is like 100 gigs, and then he's got like 3 terabytes of stuff in there.
Wow.
But after I've done after I've finished the backend migration that I'm doing, that will come next, and then I'll get the database in a manageable thing. And thank you, Google Cloud, for just continuing to scale that without much issue.
Cool. This is super, super cool.
Yeah, so I could show you more, but I feel like this is kind of the meat of everything. You know, this idea of live values, you know, the fact that we create data. Actually, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna show you creating the rest of the API. So we just got this request, which is a visit, and the visitor here you can see is Gene. So I'm going to put that into a database that said that I got. Sorry, I'm going to send a notification to myself that I got this, that I have visitor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be let visitor. You can see this is just like regular functional code. Visitors request dot body, and let me put this in the right trace. Request dot body, and you can see that we autocomplete the actual fields from the request. We don't need to like set types or anything to get this. So this is the visitor. Let's host equals request dot body dot host. And then I'm going to say let user is db get db query one, where the from the hosts, so that's the table, and then where the value dot host equals host. Sorry, we're a little bit off the screen there. So that is, I'm looking up something in the host table where the name is host. So you can see no writing SQL either. And the answer that I get is nothing, because of course I haven't added it. So I'm going to quickly add a REPL, and I'm going to do db set, and the value is host Paul Biggar. And I didn't set up a thing here, so we're going to just put in my phone number. Do not text me. I do not want to hear it. db generate key. So generate key, you know, here's a UUID. I'm going to put it in the host table. I'm going to press play on that. You can see that the host table has locked. So now that there's data in it, you can't just like change the schema willy-nilly. And this is all part of like the idea that Dark is built for continuous delivery. And now when I make this request on query one, here's the user. And so now I'm going to send a text to the users. So I have added an SID in the secrets in advance. You can see that's, you know, you can see the end of that there.
Wow, this is like also my dream interface for coding against APIs. How did you get Twilio in there? Like, did you have to integrate like the Twilio API?
No, so we actually just wrote this.
Okay, cool.
And I'm going to send this to host.phone, host.what? User, there we go. User dot phone. And the body, I'm going to say, I'm actually going to add a new message here. Message is user plus is here to see you. All right. Message, and something's going on. Yeah, user, visitor is here to see me. So I'm going to press play, and we make a request. And Twilio says this is good. Twilio says it's accepted. Let me check my texts. Yeah, and I have a text here from Trillia. That's where is this?
That's amazing.
There we go. Jane is here to see you.
Nice. That's awesome. So yeah, there's some questions for you in the chat.
Yes, yes.
So the person who asked about how do you handle thousands of requests per second, they're wondering about in the UI, like is it just streaming, or do you have some way of getting that information?
Honestly, I think you're asking like, are there APIs to be able to do like metadata analysis over
I think they were interested in the UI presentation of like what happens when there are a lot of requests.
So when there's a lot of requests, your browser starts to get really slow. The fans in your laptop start to spin. And then you like contact me in Slack saying like, you need to do another optimization layer of the or another optimization pass of
I see. So it seems like basically a lot of other stuff happens, so the UI doesn't need to handle it yet.
So the state that Dark is in is like delightful but very imperfect, extremely imperfect. And there's a lot of things that need to be done to get Dark from where it is to something where someone is reasonably putting thousands of requests in this per second. But that is where we're going.
Yeah, I know, that makes sense. So related to that, someone asked you how many hours it took to build Dark. Okay. And then somebody said more like years. And then they amended their question to how many hours to V0 of Dark.
Okay, so V0 of Dark, the first thing that really worked took about 18 months. So we're now 4 years in. And a very easy accounting is we have spent $4.5 million getting this far. So engineers are 100 and let's call it 150K a year. So 30 person years. No, that's not right. I'm incapable of doing math.
I need to use a calculator for this.
Yeah. Maybe it's more like 20 person years, but like, there's definitely a lot of years that have gone into
26 and 0.67 person years.
Well, we also spend money on other things. So, but yeah, call it $4.5 million in Silicon Valley.
Cool. So somebody else asked, is there a data type declaration tool? Do you have interesting stories about data types in the Dark philosophy?
Yes. So types are not a major part of Dark at this exact moment, but they will need to be before Dark starts to get really good. So Dark is a statically typed functional language, and it's sort of weird because the implementation is dynamically typed. Like there's just an interpreter that'll take any types, but the functions will refuse if you don't give them the right types. So in terms of like, how types are going to be modeled, it's going to be, an ML. It's going to be there's going to be some types, which we're going to call enums, and there's going to be record types. And there are record types if you like look in the right place, but we actually disable that because the UI for it is terrible.
Yeah, something that I like, correct me if I'm wrong, but something I think is really cool about Dark is it has this like F# type providers feel for like APIs and like anything else you want to access.
Yeah. And the implementation of Dark like is very much ML. So the front end is Rescript, the back end was OCaml, but it's being rewritten in F#. So it's like at the start, the front end was in Elm. We've got the transition where we're trying to get like every ML language in the implementation at some point.
Cool, nice. So someone asked, how does Dark partition code to execute across the backend database, etc.? Like what's that story like?
So it's actually really straightforward. We run a bunch of interpreters in the cloud. We take an interpreter, we hook it up to a HTTP server.
Oh wow.
Just, there's some Kubernetes in there, but basically load balancer, 30 whatever machines, and data comes in, goes into the interpreter. We get your code from our database. We store the ASTs in a binary format in the database. So like, we get them out in a couple of milliseconds, run the code, send a response.
Cool. Let me see if there are other questions. Yeah, so like what are the next steps for Dark? Like what are the next few milestones where you're like, man, like I'm really excited to get this and this done? And then what's the, long term, what would be your dream for adoption? Who uses Dark? How does it get used?
Yeah. So I'll go startup-y for a little moment. What we don't have is product market fit. So for those of you who aren't like steeply versed in value lexicon, the we have a product and there is a market that does not fit to it yet. So we need to adapt it until it gets good enough that people start to like it. And that's the point at which like people use it and they say, oh my God, this is amazing. And then they actually keep using it, because today we have people using it and they say, this is amazing. And then they use it a couple minutes more and they're like, oh no, it actually kind of isn't. And then they leave. And so we're what we need to do in order to make that happen, we need to fix the UI. We need to like make it a little more scalable. We need to handle database migrations.
Yeah.
We need to expand the language. We need to expand the UI. We need to add and the most important things actually before all that, we need to add a package manager and we need to add a user module. So right now, if you try to use Dark, you're going to use it to try and make like a SaaS or something like that, and you're going to be like, I have to implement authentication myself. This is ridiculous. And then you're going to try to use like a Twitter API or something, and then you're going to realize that you have to write the HTTP authentication yourself, and all of that sucks. So that's what's needed to really get Dark to somewhere where people like it.
Yeah, no, I think this is a really interesting discussion, because I think it's not just startups that have product market fit issues, but there are a lot of research languages and research systems with product market fit issues. And a lot of researchers will argue like that's not relevant to us. That's not like, that's not what we were going for. Yeah, but like I think I think that a lot of what you're talking about with like, why don't people use X, like the reasons you give are also very, very analogous to reasons people don't use like many other tools that came from research. There are some. Oh, sorry.
In our case, someone will come from Node or Python or Rails or Go or Rust, whatever, and they'll be like, this is amazing. I can do things that I've never seen before, and one of them does not include calling it to the Stripe API. So like, I'm going to go back to using Node or Rails or whatever, where I have stuff that I'm familiar with and where I know how I'm going to be able to like, make a payment call in the Stripe API.
Yeah. So people are asking about, how does versioning work in Dark? So
background to this is because Dark is this like live editing in production. The goal was very much, how do we make this continuous delivery thing, editing in production, safe? So there's a couple of things there. So there's versioning on all the standard library functions. So we never change what a standard library function does. You don't have the screen in front of you, but basically there's a little suffix to everything. If you're using string appends, the string append v0, string append v1, string append v2. And v0, was before we had Unicode. V1 is proper Unicode string append. And maybe, I don't think we actually have v2, but maybe, normalization was broken and v2 fixes it. But if you are using v1, we are not going to change v1 out from under you so that your code stays the same. We'll build deprecation and upgrading and that sort of thing into the platform, but we just build a new one, build a new version of the same function, leave the old one exactly intact. And then the new function is the thing that's going to be presented to everyone. Anything that's deprecated isn't even shown to you in the autocomplete unless you're already using it. Okay. So that's versioning on standard library. There's probably going to be language versioning at some point. So far, we've managed to make the language changes forward compatible. But at some point, you will choose the language of your handler, and all new handlers will start with the new version of the language. And those are for things that have very, we have to remove a couple of things from language. We have to add a couple of things to the language. Yeah. And then there's versioning around databases as well. So there's a built-in migration framework. So the standard way that people do migrations when you have a lot of scale is you create a new table with the new schema, and then you read from the new table, you read from the old table, and you and you migrate, one row at a time and then a background job. And we're going to implement basically exactly that. You tell us the new schema, or I think we will have switched to types by then. So you tell us the new type, the old type is fixed. You can access it using the new type. You can access it using the old type, and there'll be a roll forward and roll back function. So it's really designed around this idea of you're running a live system. And I think we will get to a place where it feels very safe to do that. Right now, it feels mostly unsafe to do that.
Okay, cool. Quinn also said she's made a link shortener about a year ago. So she shared the link to that in the chat, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
And then somebody asked about what's the extensibility story.
That's great.
That's pretty cool.
I'm sorry.
And somebody asked, what's the extensibility story like? So can users build pluggable integrations, like database, Twilio, et cetera? If someone wants to add, if someone's like, look, I love Dark, but I want to use Stripe, like, can they somehow put Stripe in it?
So that's what I'm referring to as the package manager. And we have the bare bones of a package manager that has about 20 things in it. And there are security concerns. There's a bunch of things I need to do before the package manager can be pushed to other humans. But that's generally the idea, that it will be possible to create your own packages and put URLs, or sorry, put whatever you need in them to be able to call functions and so on. And then we'll also add things like commands and like templates and that sort of thing to it, so that you can be like, here's 6 routes that you can just install to your canvas. So very, very pluggable. I also plan on making the editor pluggable. So there's refactoring commands at the moment, and I want those refactoring commands to be written in Dark, to be executed in the Dark interpreter in your editor. But that's not how they work now.
Cool. And so does the pluggability, like, how much does it extend to just things outside the system, right? So if someone has a bunch of legacy services or something that they're trying to work on, like, do they just make those pluggable APIs, or what's the story?
Exactly. We consider the foreign function interface of Dark to be HTTP.
Okay.
So you want to talk to another service, or you want to build something that doesn't exist, but like you want to take a library or something and put it into Dark. Put it in a HTTP service, put it on service or something, and talk about it.
Cool. I love that, because I feel like like HTTP is just the new like intermediate representation of the internet. And so like once that becomes the thing, then like you can sort of port things over to something like Dark. If you have like a smooth transition story.
Yeah. And then you could just like put a nice wrapper around it, and now it's just a function. So,
cool. That's awesome. And then like how, like, does someone have to type like the Dark interface to the thing? So is part of the pluggability like someone has to write out types for what happens?
It's just everything's just code. So there's no types now. There will be types. So you would add the types and so on.
Okay, cool. That's really cool.
With types, the intent is that we can infer them directly, but you will do you'll use a refactoring command to take a live value and say, make me a type out of this.
Yeah. Cool. No, that's really cool. And like, what's the story of the, like, who works on Dark now, how it's getting worked on, what that's going to look like?
Yeah. So we had 8 people working on Dark, and right now it is just 1. And what happened there basically is that we didn't have we didn't hit our Series A. So we raised about 5 million seed. We were looking to raise another 10 million, and we just didn't have the users. We didn't have product market fit. It nearly landed, but didn't. And so took a hard look at the money that we had, and where we could go, and realized that with the way we were spending, Dark would be dead. It would actually be dead by now. And so sort of took a hard look and had to do a layoff. And so now it's just me working on Dark, and I'm starting to hire. I'm sort of doing a couple of interviews at the moment, but looking to hire some early engineers again, and just like keep a really small team and get it. I think it'll take about 2 years to get to product market fit with a really small team.
Yeah, someone in the chat mentioned they really appreciate the transparency, but I think it's the much braver thing to do to be very transparent about lack of product market fit rather than keep
Mhm.
taking money and then have it explode somewhere
Yeah.
further down the line.
And I'm
Um,
sure people saw the dark website as it is today. And it's kind of, I think it's this really, like, I'm doing a terrible job of marketing dark because I'm telling people that this thing works and it's like the best way to build an API.
yeah,
And like objectively, it's not. It's an okay way to build an API if you really want to
right.
suffer through it. And what I'm going to do, and this is somewhere on the list, is like rewrite that homepage to talk about dark as a thing which is on a journey to somewhere great, and
Yeah.
you might enjoy it if you're in this subset of people. But that here's where we're going, here's where it is now, and just be like super like brutally honest about the state.
Yeah. No, I think like that's also something that we've learned too, is like if you promise people a lot of stuff, they'll show up, but then they're like, where's the stuff?
Yeah, yeah. That's
um,
what to us.
yeah. Cool. So someone asked any plans to allow library authors to monetize their packages?
Mhm. Yeah, so I guess the interesting thing is I have thought out like 10 or 15 years in advance. Yeah, I've been in dev tools for quite a while. I have a lot of opinions about business models and about open source and monetization and sustainability of ecosystems and that sort of thing. And it's pretty obvious to me that you want to allow people to monetize their packages. Not only to monetize their packages, but you kind of want to like wherever you're making money, you want to like kick back to your ecosystem as well. So
Mm,
like we will in the future make money from infrastructure.
mm,
Um, and so, if people are building a lot of infrastructure because, someone else built this like wonderful package that everyone is using and that like is turning revenue in, it's like at some
cool.
point, you have to pay for at the very least the future maintainability of these things. Um, and this debate is going on, through open source and has been for a while and will continue to. But I kind of believe that like kind of revenue helps with that sort of sustainability and that like
Yeah.
the ecosystem. Yeah. Anyway, you'll be able to give stuff away for free, and you'll be able to like sell sort of like the equivalent of SaaS apps. So if you've got something like let's say Intercom is a good example. We'll give you some sort of package, or someone will create some sort of package that you can install to your own dark canvas, and it'll do something akin to some of the packages or some of the SaaS products that are out there, and you can sell that. You can make some monthly money from it, or whatever, in some sort of marketplace, which we're calling a package manager because we sell to developers, and developers like package managers and don't like marketplaces.
Cool. So we just got raided by a bunch of OCaml people, but they might have all
Oh,
disappeared. Um, there was
and
a big bump, and then I think then I don't know how many of them are still here, but hi everyone. There's Eduardo has an OCaml live stream, and I think they
mhm.
just finished, so they just showed up. Is Dark still mostly OCaml?
Dark is being ported from OCaml to F Sharp on the back end. That's about 90%
Interesting.
done. And the front end is using the OCaml syntax of Rescript. At some point, I will switch that over to the Rescript syntax, not because I like it, but because if you don't play nice with if you don't get to play nice with their tools.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know if you know this, Paul, but funny story about how I first found out about the existence of Dark was
Okay.
because you hired my student Jonathan to
Oh, no
consult
way.
on Jonathan. Yeah, because Jonathan
Oh
was
my
helping
God.
you guys
Yeah.
with OCaml, and before that, it was Pierre, who I used to work with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
so I didn't know OCaml when I started. This is in 2017, and so I was like, I hypothesized that static types will help, and I didn't like Haskell. No offense to any Haskellers in the audience. And the Python thing I had built just was not doing well for the refactors. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try OCaml, but I have no idea what I'm reading. This is crazy stuff. So I hired two, in fact, over time, OCamlers from the community, Yeah, Jonathan and Pierre, and they sort of taught me OCaml, and they fixed up my meager attempts at a build system, and like all the things I didn't know how to do, they did for me. And actually did a very similar thing with your guest from last week, Thomas, who was did some consulting for me when I didn't know how F# worked. He was at the other end of WhatsApp, answering my questions for the feed.
Yeah, that's cool. Because I had to sign a permission slip for Jonathan to work with me. And I was like, what is this language? Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, small world. Cool. So is Dark going to continue as a VC backed high growth kind of thing? Or what kind of model do you want to take with it? Because something I really like thinking about is the funding model behind a language really determines pretty much everything about it. And someone earlier in the chat asked have you considered asking a company to sort of sponsor Dark? What's possible to do, and what are you hoping to do with it?
Yeah, so the fundamental goal is sustainability, and there's obvious it's a service, so there's obvious revenue opportunities. I think that the trajectory that we're on, we're probably not going to get to be able to run sites at a large enough scale in the near term to make that sustainable on a pure infrastructure revenue kind of thing. So I would imagine that we will instead be focusing on more of a GitHub model. So charging on a per user, or the old GitHub, charge on a per user thing, have public repos be free. Still some figuring out what public means in the Dark sense, because I don't want to show people that their customers' traces, or maybe I do, maybe that's what public means. I've yet to figure that out. And so just have that sustainability, and if while getting Dark sustainable, it suddenly takes off and becomes absolutely massive, then we might be back in the VC track, and certainly my VCs would be delighted if that happened. And if that doesn't happen, then we'll figure something sustainable. I'm in this for the long term. I did well out of CircleCI. I can afford to stay doing this for until it works, and probably much longer.
Yeah, no, I think that's super cool. And I think it's really good to be very honest with yourself and everyone. Is this a high growth thing yet?
Yeah. I mean, I had a couple of walkaway opportunities, and sort of had to take a layoff is a tough thing to go through for everyone. I suppose me much less than the others, but still a little challenging. And had to go through my emotions and figure out is this something that I want to do long term? And honestly, this is my baby. This is what else am I going to do in my life? This is a perfect project for someone who's a geek about programming languages and into web stuff and likes UXs. Yeah, this is great. I'm here for a long time.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. Yeah, because I last year we pivoted the Akita team as well, not quite as dramatically, but I can only imagine what how hard it was for you. Cool. So a lot of people have questions. Let me take a look. So someone said, are there any particular kinds of people you're looking to engage with in terms of developing product market fit? So are there certain kinds of potential users you want, or buyers or investors?
Yes, I mean the thing that Dark is good for is building APIs. You're storing data, receiving data. What works really well at the moment is people building prototypes or people building internal tools. So prototypes are really good because Dark is actually pretty good at switching things around really quickly, and we found that people can build their prototypes really quickly. And because it's so quick to build a prototype, they don't mind if they end up having to rewrite it in Node or whatever. And I think a recognition that Dark is not yet somewhere that you want to build your SaaS app, but is pretty good for a first prototype. And I have a bunch of people who built those prototypes. The other one is if you're building an internal tool that's sort of a Slack bot, something along those lines, where you don't have to touch too many APIs, just the the handful that we have supported. That's a pretty good place to be as well. Just it's super easy to receive requests, and you don't have to set up Heroku or set up any IAM or serverless or Lambda or whatever. It's just like really easy to get that set up. And I think that in about, I hope about 6 months, we'll be in a place where things that are using sort of any sort of API are a really good fit for where Dark is then, but that's not it today.
That's super cool. Quinn said that she just realized Dark is exactly what she needs for a talk she's giving next week. She needs a small remote API to use in a demo, and Dark is perfect for building that. I feel like actually the thing you said about prototyping is really underrated, because I tweet about this sometimes, but there's like this notion of an artist sketch where you're just playing with things. Because I think that a lot of the methodology that people prescribe around programming is you write a spec, you know everything that's going to happen, and then you code to the spec. But like there's this whole space of exploration zones, and this is my hypothesis about why dynamically typed languages are popular, why scripting languages are popular. You're trying to explore. And I feel like Dark seems like a perfect like artist sketch, like, you know, exploration tool for figuring out like what it is you want.
Yes. So I completely agree with that. I actually have a blog post about this, which I'm going to find for the chat. The idea, or part of the idea of Dark is that, you know, allow these explorations. And I found that statically typed languages like are not that great at it, because
Absolutely.
you have to do all this stuff, you know, with options and results and whatever. And so we designed this thing which is called an error rail, which is sort of, you know, if you're into the PL side of things, you know, it's monadic and all that sort of thing. But basically it unwrapped, whenever you use an option or a result, we unwrap it automatically. And that brings a ton of that prototyping ease back into it. It's flawed in a bunch of other ways and needs a lot of like UX work. But from the perspective of like writing things really quickly and you know, kind of bringing that joy that you get from scripting languages, I think it's really like a nice feature for that. And I think that you're totally right about that's kind of why scripting languages are great and why they took off so much.
Yeah, and I think this is like, I hadn't thought about Dark this way at all, but I think that it's like, you know, Figma with a back end, or it's like really the perfect tool for playing around with like how you want interactions to work. Especially if you need to hook up data. Because I think that like at least one thing we struggle with for all of our interaction design is like we'll design like, you know, clickable whatever, and then we'll pipe like real user data through it. Looks terrible. And I think that like, you know, like all like pretty much like half our interactions just like fall apart, right? Because it's like, oh, like when you have 5 things here, it looks fine, but like at 100, it just like you cannot handle it anymore. And I feel like especially like for a lot, like as a lot of dev tools are like actually handling complex amounts of things, and you're like trying to, you know, like I think that a lot of people just like hold their, like, you know, like I guess when they're doing these interfaces, what I imagine happens given the state of them is they just like hold their breath and close their eyes, and they're like, that part is not really part of our like elegant user interface. But you know, like I feel like this, like how do you do interfaces with complex data piping into it and real data, like Dark seems like a perfect thing for that.
And a lot of what we're thinking about is like, what are the little like platform components that you can add extensibility to allow people to do anything? So if you look like at Observable is, you know, this really, you know, it's Jupyter notebooks with like beautiful, you know, APIs and connectivity and beautiful representation of the data. In the first, you know, in the pitch deck that I had for Dark, you know, all of that was part of it. And it will be someday. Because we're going to take this thing where we show you live values, and we're going to be like, okay, you can take the live value and put into like some charting library, some graphing library, and then you can see, you know, the number of requests over time, a heat map of how long, you know,
like that's super cool.
Responses are being sent, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, someone in the chat said, "What if glitch but backend?"
Yes, very much so. I remember seeing glitch in like a very early version. I was hanging out with Joel, and he took me to like see this thing, and I was like, yes, this is kind of what I'm building. This was just pre-Dark, and I was like, yes, this liveness, and then he typed, and there was like a syntax error, and it didn't work, and I was like, oh no, but different. I love what glitch is doing. I think it's great.
Awesome, cool. So like, if people want to try dark out, if they want to use dark, like what do they do to, do they get in touch
You
with
go
you?
to darklang.com, you click
Yeah.
the sign up button.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
And
you can be in moments.
is there a notion of contributing to dark?
Yeah, so we have we are source available, and the repo, I'm pasting it in the chat now. And we take contributions. There's a CLA and that sort of thing. The right now it's in F# and Rescript. But it will, soon there will be a package manager. Soon there will be a package manager that you can contribute to like the ecosystem at large.
Yeah, cool. That's really exciting. And Kevin says, what if MySpace did for inspiring front-end devs? I wonder if Dark could do for back-end devs. Yeah, I think Dark is this like very interesting point in like UX and DevX for back-end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how to build like this idea of DX is like relatively new in our field. I feel like Heroku probably invented that. Like the first people to put like a super nice interface. And like it really matters. It like developers feel it, and
yeah,
I think in Dark, there are some things that are like clearly developer. This is clearly a tool for developers, like the color scheme, the name, that sort of thing. And then there's things that like just kind of suck for developers. And you just have to like work each of them out. Like I'm going to have to like fix each and every one of those for someone to feel like you're really at home at Dark.
Yeah, cool. So we have just a few minutes left. Do you have like final thoughts, learnings to share, requests for the audience?
I wish I was prepared at this. Learnings to share. It is hard to build an editor and a language and a infrastructure all at one. Surprise! But the thing that's really interesting actually is, so Dark doesn't have a parser. What we do instead is we do like this AST manipulation, and every time you press a character, we change the AST to like add that character to the AST in the right place. So never have a syntax error, never have a parse error. But it means that adding features to the language, you need to think through the interaction model for creating this thing. Like, what are the characters that I'm going to press in order to put this thing into the AST in what order? And what happens when I delete them? What happens when I highlight them? What happens, if I'm going to like cut and paste from it? All of that becomes part of the language itself in a way that just isn't true if you have a text-based language.
Yeah, cool. Nice. Well, on that note, I think if you're available, Paul, the people might have more questions for you in the Discord Stream of the Week channel afterward. So here, let me actually put in the link from the Discord so that people can join us there. And it doesn't have to be synchronous. So like, I know it's much later over there. So if you have to go do other things, you can like come back.
I'll be there for a bit.
Yeah, cool. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. This was a really cool conversation, both in terms of the demo and just like all the dynamics around Dark. I had been super curious about like, what's going to happen, because it seems like such a cool idea. I wanted to, become the thing.
Oh, me too.
that it's supposed to be. So like anything this community can do to help. I'm sure there are a lot of other people who are also very happy to spread the word, spread the Dark gospel.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, and thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah, and final announcements. So everyone, next week we have Ned Williamson, who he is a fuzzer. I think that's the best way to describe him. He's the person who's probably taught me the most about fuzzing. He works at Google on the security team. If you Google Ned Williamson hacks, like there's some pretty good hacks he's done. But he is just a master fuzzer. And so we had John Reguera on a few weeks ago to talk about fuzzing, but yeah, Ned is